This is late. That one starts at 8:15. Michelle? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get this show on the road. If you can all take your seats and get ready. I'm Ruben Anthony, the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Madison.
All right.
Thank you. I want to thank you for coming out on this very cold night to meet these three excellent candidates. First, the incumbent Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway. Let's give her a round of applause. Former Deputy Mayor Gloria Reyes. Let's give her a round of applause. And longtime public servant Scott Kerr. Let's give him a round of applause. And we also have Daniel Howe, a writing candidate in the audience. Give him a round of applause. Tonight's event is a collaboration between the NAACP, the 100 Black Men, the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign, the Urban League of Greater Madison, and the Divine Nine, which includes Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Kappa Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Delta Sigma Theta, Phi Beta Sigma, Zeta Phi Beta, Sigma Gamma Rho, and the Iota Phi Theta. Only two of the organizations will be asking questions tonight. So let me just quickly explain the process, and we're going to get right down to business. Each of the six panels will pose a question to the candidates, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. I will direct the order of who will respond to the question, so I'll mix it up so that we're not asking the candidate to go first each time. I'll have a timekeeper over in the corner there, Michelle Heisinger.
Sorry, we're going to use Rebecca.
Oh, that's what I asked you. Oh, so you're the timekeeper. All right, good. All right, so we have a timekeeper, and when she gives me the time, I'm going to say stop, and if you don't stop, I'm going to turn your mic off. No, if there's time left after we've gone through all the questions, then we'll take questions from the audience. But let me briefly introduce the panelists. From the NAACP, Anthony Whitaker, the Vice President and Chairman of the Political Action Committee. Ernestine Moss from Delta Sigma Theta, a member of the Social Action Committee. From our 100 Black Men, we have Dr. Rose just walking into the building. Let's give him a round of applause. He's the president of 100 Black Men. From the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign and the executive director of Faith Voices. Give it up for Rabbi Bonnie Margulis. And from Omega Psi Phi, we have Mr. James Howard, former chair of the school board for MMSD. And from the Blacks for Political and Social Action, we have the publisher and editor of Umoja Magazine, Miss Yvette Craig. So Dr. Rose, here's your seat over here. So first we're going to give the candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And so I want the candidates to do two things. One, say who you are, what you're about, and then why you for mayor. And I'm going to start with you, Mayor Satya Rhodes. We're
sharing the microphone?
Yep, we're going to be sharing the mic.
Well, good evening, everyone. And let me start by saying a huge thank you to the Urban League for hosting us and for this great group of organizations for organizing. Really appreciate it. And for all of you for coming out on this very cold night and wanting to participate in our local democracy. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Satya Rhodes-Conway. I have the honor of being the mayor of the great city of Madison. And I want to tell you a little bit about where we've been and where I hope we're going. 4 years ago, Madison voted for change. Madison voted for a mayor who would take our housing crisis seriously, who would finally bring rapid transit to the city, who would fight climate change, and who would infuse equity into the work that the city does all across the board. And I'm proud to say that despite the global pandemic, we have made progress on all of those things and more. During the pandemic, obviously our community was deeply impacted, and we struggled both on the health front, but also it had deep economic impacts for our small businesses and our families and our neighborhoods. And I'm proud of the work that I did with County Executive Parisi in collaboration and with public health, which resulted in some of the highest vaccination rates in the country in our community. I'm proud of how our community came through the pandemic. We did really pull together, but there are lasting impacts. And we need to keep working together to tackle them. And so I'm proud of my continued collaboration with the county executive and proud to have his endorsement. And proud to keep working on the issues that are important to Madisonians. We're working still on housing, we're working on public safety, we're working on climate, we're working on equitable economic development, including significant investments in the South Side. I hope to earn your support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kerr, you got 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank everyone for showing up tonight, and definitely thank you to the groups that organized this. My name is Scott Kerr. I'm a lifelong Madison resident who has spent my entire adult life working for the city of Madison. I love the city. I know we can be even better than what we are. I have strived to improve the city in every position I've held, and I hope to continue doing that from the mayor's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr.
Hello, Gloria Reyes here. I am so happy to be up here, and just you guys look so beautiful from my vantage point. Thank you so much for Urban League for hosting this event and all the organizations. It's an honor to be here in front of you. I'm running for mayor because I care about the city. Madison raised me. As a daughter of migrant farm workers who came to Madison during the Cesar Chavez movement, fighting for better wages and living conditions for hardworking families across the United States and right here in Wisconsin. I became a law enforcement officer because I wanted to build trust and relationships between our communities of color and the Madison Police Department. I then served as deputy mayor for 5 years under Mayor Paul Soglin. And against all odds, the city of Madison voters elected me to be the first Latina to serve on the Madison School Board. And then just 1 year on, my colleagues appointed me to serve as the board president during the most tumultuous times in recent history. I led our Madison district through the pandemic and also the social unrest after George Floyd's murder. And then I became a CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services to ensure that young people had a safe place to go. I care about attainable housing. Businesses, not just to survive, but to thrive. Creating a safe community. That's exactly what I did as a law enforcement officer. And that's exactly what I'll do as your mayor. I did it as a police officer, as I said, and CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services. Worked with young people, our most vulnerable young people, to keep them out of the juvenile justice system, and those young people who were homeless. Let's move Madison forward together by voting Gloria Reyes for mayor on February 21st and April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. All right. Now we're going to turn to our panel. Anthony, now we're going to turn to you to ask the first question, and we're going to direct that to Ms. Riaz, and we're going to come from Ms. Riaz down this way, and the next question, we're going to go that way. So go ahead, Anthony.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us this evening. My question is this. According to the nonpartisan Wisconsin Policy Forum, Black homeownership in Madison is 15% compared to 53% for white households. As mayor, how would you ensure Black Madisonians can accumulate wealth through homeownership? And as the city seeks to balance growing population, how do you plan to do that with a lack of available single-family homes? Thank you.
That's a great question, and it's something that is astonishing to me as a city that we talk about equity all the time. The median Black household income, demographic by race or ethnicity, is unable to afford median rent in the city. Over half of the rental housing in the city is not affordable for our Black families. And it's even worse for, as you said, for our Black home ownership. I plan to develop a mayor's housing advisory team, and that's going to consist of planning councils, neighborhood associations, developers, residents, property managers, realtors, to implement targeted solutions to move Black families into home ownership. We have designated significant funds to build rental housing in the city. And we need targeted approaches to ensure that our Black families are ready. And we do that by working with organizations such as Own It, work with lenders to provide a pathway into home ownership, starting really early, providing literacy, education in our schools, as early as in our schools, and to our families. And so Own It is a program that helps support a group of realtors that help support Black families get into home ownership. It provides for generational wealth, and that's what holds us back in the city. And that's why we have a huge disparity. And so again, working with lenders is a significant opportunity for us. I don't think we're doing that as a city, and we need to move that up. I know that it's part of the Housing Forward plan, but we can't have a housing strategy if we don't have intentional, focused interventions. Thank you.
The goal of home ownership, single-family home ownership, is fabulous. And unfortunately, right now, land prices alone in this area have made it unattainable for almost everyone. Improving how minority families, Black families, and anyone who's not already owning a house can get one is not going to be an easy answer. The city doesn't build single-family homes. We don't have land to provide for single-family home use. Working with lenders, working with the state to try and expand some of the programs that are out there is a great idea. But this has to be education and employment opportunities to improve your income before we can come up with a way to supply single-family homes. Right now, the big builders are paying over $100,000 per acre for undeveloped land on the outskirts of the city and then bringing it in. When they're paying $100,000 for raw land without any infrastructure on it, they are expecting to sell homes in the $400,000 range, and that's what they're doing. I can't afford a $400,000 house. If I didn't already have a house, I couldn't afford to buy one on my salary now. So I'm not sure how that we have a solid answer for you, but I do understand the issue. Habitat has done a pretty good job of building single-family homes for underprivileged people and minorities for the most part, but it's not the only answer. Working with lenders, I think, is a great system to work towards.
Thanks for the question. Madison has a long and shameful history of redlining and exclusion in our housing market and in real estate. And I think there's three things that we are doing and need to keep doing in order to make a difference. And the first is the creation of housing. You implied it in your question. As we've heard, it's actually very difficult to create detached single-family homes that are affordable to a first-time home buyer. My staff is actively researching right now how we can create ownership opportunities for that first-time home buyer. It might not be a detached single-family home. It might be a townhouse. It might be a condo. But we are actively working on how we can create that type of housing in Madison. That's thing one. Thing two is helping to support folks be ready for ownership and be able to enter the ownership market. And here I have to give a shout out to the work that the Urban League has done in preparing people for homeownership and helping them with down payments. The city has a program to give down payment assistance. That's something that we need to continue to do. And the third thing is we need to build wealth so people can afford to buy in our community. And we can do that through supporting entrepreneurs, in supporting small businesses, and supporting ownership opportunities on the business side to help build wealth for the ownership side. You know, we don't have in the city, unfortunately, the ability to raise people's wages or to mandate a higher minimum wage. The state took that away from us some time ago, unfortunately. But we can help support folks in accessing better jobs or in creating entrepreneurship opportunities, which I think can lead to homeownership opportunities. Thank you.
So the second question will be asked by the Delta City State Representative, and that will be directed to you first.
Mayor, starts here. Rhodes-Conway. There is a Black Renaissance on the south side of Madison, and two major undertakings are being developed: the Black Business Hub and the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. What have you done, or what will you do to make sure, excuse me, to make sure these two initiatives are successful or realized in Madison under your direction?
Thank you for the question. There is indeed a Black Renaissance going on in South Madison today, and I think that's something to celebrate. My staff have been working diligently behind the scenes with the leadership, both of the Black Business Hub and the Center for Black Excellence and Culture. And we've supported the hub in particular through significant investments here at the Villager, and on the order of millions of dollars to create parking and to invest in this property. We're also supporting the center and help them secure funds from the state government through ARPA as well. But the projects don't stop there. We can't not recognize the work that Centro is doing to build themselves a new home, and the city's been intimately involved in that. We're doing a property swap with them. And I want to shout out to the work that the YWCA is doing as well, and the work that they're trying to do to increase ownership in our community. So we have been supporting these projects. We'll continue to support these projects and new ones as they come forward. The city's also been land banking on the south side so that we can help to preserve affordability both for housing but also for commercial opportunities. And we are, I hope, shortly going to be creating a tax increment financing district for the south side for Park Street, which will allow us, if the council approves it, to invest over $100 million in the south side for economic development, but perhaps more importantly, for homeownership opportunities here on the south side and for infrastructure investments. I'm very excited about what's possible here in South Madison and the investments that we collectively will be able to make. And just to close that thought, I think we have to all recognize the investment that Madison College made in the South Side, because that really was a foundational investment that I think spurred a lot of big thinking and visioning around what was possible in the Park Street corridor. And so a lot is due to their investments.
Okay, I regrettably have to admit that I am actively involved in the sites as an enforcement officer for the City of Madison Traffic Engineering. So currently, Central Hispano is suffering because the hub got the sidewalk closure first on their side of Hughes Place. I can't let both sidewalks be closed at the same time. So I'm in a rough spot on that. But I have supported it and I've worked with them to expand things. The hub has run into some really interesting problems. Nobody realized that that had been a gas station, and when they took the pumps out or the tanks out of the ground, they backfilled it with pea gravel. So when they started doing work down there, the whole site started slumping in. So my experience and my work on this is a little bit more mundane and day-to-day active with it, but I've supported it and I'd continue to support it. I just don't have the programs and the knowledge of that to put the funding into it. I'm the guy that's on the site. So.
That's great. You're on the site. I like that. I just got to say, just thank you to all the organizations who are leading this effort, right? It has really been grassroots. And the Black Renaissance and the Black Business Hub, you all see a vision. And it's about time, right? How many years did it take us to get here, right? And so I'm grateful for the COVID money, one-time investments that we were able to make in South Madison. I'm concerned, though, about the long-term budget deficit and being able to sustain the South Madison development project into the future. If it wasn't, I guess let's just be frank here, if it wasn't for the one-time money, the city would not have made this commitment. A budget is a statement of priorities. And if no one-time money in South Madison would be available, we would not have made that a priority. We can't use one-time money for ongoing projects. We're creating a budget hole, and it's worse than the bus rapid transit system. The recent budgets we're relying on ARPA, we're relying on TID 25, we're relying on the transit recovery. It's going to help us for 1 to 2 years. What are we going to do after that? We will face a significant fiscal cliff when this runs out. And it's going to have an impact on our city services and most vulnerable. And so as mayor, I'm going to meet with our finance staff to really figure out how do we continue in the next 1 to 2 years in this budget deficit and help support South Madison and the business renaissance move forward. And so we need to move forward on equity lines. What I don't want to happen.
Thank you. The next question will be asked by Dr. Floyd Rose from 100 Black Men and directed to Mr. Kerr first.
Dr. Anthony, we can't hear you. A little louder.
The next question will be asked from Dr. Floyd Rose from 100 Black Men. Thank you. And directed to Mr. Kerr.
My question is, how's that? How's that? I'll even stand up. My question is, should police wear body-worn cameras? Yes, no, or why? Now, here's a footnote. I conspired with my colleague, Dr. Anthony, and we found 20 questions that were asked of mayoral candidates in 2015 by the Wisconsin State Journal. And that was one of the questions. And it didn't get much of an answer. So we are looking for your leadership and intelligence and intellect so that you can answer a question that has been answered for 8 years. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Rose, thank you for that and your auditory abilities. It is a priority to put body cameras on every officer. The recent incident in Memphis shows that we have to have body cameras on there to protect the citizens and to protect the good officers. The problem is the body cameras aren't enough. The incident in Memphis, the only reason that we all know exactly what happened was the overhead camera as well. The combination is important, and I fully support putting body cameras on every officer and expanding our traffic camera or overhead camera system so that we have good coverage throughout the city. We'll never get an overhead camera on every corner, but it should be at every major intersection at the very least, and every officer will have body cameras.
Yeah, I have been advocating for body cameras for the past several years. I've spoken at council meetings. I have been loud about this. And so has the chief. The chief that I highly respect, that he knows what he's doing and leading our city on public safety issues. I trust him, and he's been advocating for body cameras. I was the deputy mayor when we first, we developed a committee to review body cameras. And we did our due diligence, right? The committee felt that we needed to do a Madison Police Department policy and procedure review. We hired consultants. We spent $400,000 on consultants who came through, gave us some great recommendations. And we did that. And we're still here talking about body cameras. And the mayor has been silent on this. We all have been wondering, where are we with body cameras? The mayor needs to support the police chief and our police department. Particularly, we just got done seeing Tyree Nichols murder by police officers in Memphis. It was horrific, all caught on body cameras. And if we did not have those body cameras, where would we be? And so it allows for accountability and transparency that is needed in today's environment, in ensuring that we're building trust and relationships with our police department. Thank you.
Respectfully, Dr. Rose, the answer to your question is maybe. And the reason that I say maybe is because the police department is, as we speak, working on a body cam pilot in the city of Madison. And I want to respect that process. I want to respect the development of the policies around body cameras and wait for the data and see what the police department finds as the results of that pilot. But that said, let me say this. We're asking the wrong question. The question is not, should police have body cameras or not? The question is, how do we prevent misbehavior in police departments? Body cameras might be part of the answer, but they are definitely not the whole answer, because if they were the whole answer, Tyree Nichols would be alive today. Right? So it is not, we are asking the wrong question here. We need to be asking the question of what prevents misconduct. And the chief has spoken to this issue, and I think has good plans for training, and not just initial training in the academy, but ongoing training in our police force to create the culture that will prevent that kind of misconduct in our city. That's what we need to be talking about, is how do we prevent these horrific incidents from happening, not just how do we hold people accountable afterwards. That's important. But it's more important to prevent those kinds of things from happening at all.
Thank you, Mayor. So the next question will be directed to Gloria Rios first, and it'll be asked by the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign by Rabbi Bonnie Margulis.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. The Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign is a joint project of Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice and the Wisconsin Council of Churches. We work to get as many people registered and out to vote as possible. I also am a poll worker, and we've been finding both jobs getting harder and harder as our legislature has put up more and more barriers, particularly for brown and black voters. What would you do to ensure that every voter gets to register and gets to vote, and that our election workers and poll workers are able to do their jobs safely?
Yeah, thank you for that question, and thank you for your work, very important work. You know, I think we have to have, again, an intentional focus on reaching our diverse communities to get out the vote. What I learned when I ran for school board, and now that I'm running for mayor, is that politicians only direct their attention during the time of elections to specific voter base. And I was very, very concerned about that. Because what do we get, right? The voter base, predominantly in Madison, white. We miss many voices of color during the voting process. And it all starts in our high schools. As soon as a student turns 18, we should be engaging them to be part of the democracy, the democratic process early on, and it has to be evaluated through an equity lens so that we're engaging. We're not waiting for people to come register at City Hall, that we're out in the community and getting poll workers who look like the communities that we're trying to get registered and out in our communities at events. I know that is happening more, which is great, but we have to do better. And it's attending every event we should go to, we should have a poll worker out there who looks like us to get people registered to vote. And it's part of changing the culture of this city because they have to understand why it's important. And because I'm not going to say my age, but it took me a long time to realize the importance of voting. And our children, our young people need to understand that their vote counts.
Mr. Kerr? Voter registration is not something the mayor's office could really address. Polling places, we can. The state's got to come up with a better way for voter registration. But I do like the idea of an educational basis on it. We don't have to wait till the student turns 18. We can make it something that they start following early on in high school and get involved in their civics and follow the politics of not just their city, but their school board, their state, and hopefully the national politics so that they understand what's going on and they appreciate the importance of voting early on. I've been a city employee since I was 18 years old. Every election, I would tell every customer that drove out of the Park Street or the Lake Street ramp when I was working there that I wanted them to go vote and pick me a new boss. Anything you can do to encourage people to vote is great. Polling places, we do a very good job in Madison compared to a lot of other places at providing the number of polling places and the convenient layout of them. We do a fabulous job of making sure that voters can get in and out, that it's not a delay, and our staffing levels for the polling is fabulous. I've worked the polls for a number of years. I'm not allowed to do it this year, but I've worked the polls for a number of years, and I've never had more people interested in helping and volunteering than we have for the last couple of cycles. So I think that portion we do a great job on. Educationally, we have to come up with a way to start earlier and maybe even go down to middle school, but definitely make it early on in high school where we're educating people about the importance of what politics really does in their lives.
So one of the things that happened when the pandemic hit was that we had an April election to run. And we faced a lot of issues. We lost about 3,000 poll workers. We had polling places saying you can't come in. And I supported our clerk's office in recruiting poll workers. We asked city staff to work the polls. And we supplied, basically I said to our clerk, you tell me what you need, we'll make it happen. And we pulled off I think maybe the first pandemic election in the country. It wasn't pretty, but we did it. And since then, we've been working consistently to support the clerk's office, to get them the resources that they need so that every eligible voter can register, can be educated about what's on the ballot, and can vote easily and safely. My budgets have dedicated funding for additional clerks, including a bilingual clerk. We offered hazard pay for poll workers during the pandemic. The clerks are out, and they're literally here right now outside, Thank you for being here. They are out in many, many places in our community, registering people to vote, educating people. They go out into schools. They offer mock elections. We increase the penalties for harassment of clerks and poll workers so that if anybody does give them a hard time, we can hold those folks accountable. We have numerous early voting sites in our community. Last election, we had 31 early voting sites across our community to make it easier for people to vote. And all of this despite a state legislature that doesn't want you to vote and is doing everything they can to keep you from voting, to the extent that because we put in drop boxes here in the city of Madison, and because Mary Beth Witzel-Bell, our fantastic clerk, had the great idea to do democracy in the park, they tried to put me in jail. Didn't work, by the way.
All right. So the next question will be from Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated from Mr. James Howard, first directed to Scott.
Thank you. Diversity, equity, inclusion are top of the mind discussions throughout society these days. What specific actions would you commit to, if elected to your position, to ensure fairness for all of your constituents?
Wow, nothing like a simple question. Madison does a pretty good job already. We have mandatory training for city employees. We offer every chance that we get, we try to make it inclusive to all residents. I'm not sure that I can do a better job than we've already been doing, but I'm sure open to any ideas on how to do that. That's one of the things I want to do, is to make the city more responsive to what the citizens' needs are. So if you reach out to the government and we don't have an answer for you, we'll research it. We'll find a way to respond back to it. In this particular case, I'm not sure, other than strengthening perhaps our outreach for employment, but even then, we will be accused of neglecting some group, no matter how we handle it. I just don't have a solid answer for you on that, but I'm willing to take anybody's suggestions.
All right, so we're going to come this way.
The great Mike Shuffle. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your service. One of the things that I did early on in my term was work with the Department of Civil Rights and Director Norm Davis to create a division under the Department of Civil Rights, a division of equity and social justice, and to hire a director for that division. And she's been on board now for some years, and I think is doing fantastic work to take the work that was started by city staff in the Racial Equity and Social Justice Initiative within the city of Madison, and really bring that throughout not just all of city government, but start to push it out, that work out into the community as well. With her support and under my leadership, we have conducted more equity analyses of projects that we do. We have subjected every job description, and before it gets posted, it goes through an equity analysis to make sure that we're not unduly excluding folks. And we're really trying to build that work into the day-to-day processes of the city. But it's not enough for the city to do, the city government to do that work, right? We have to be thinking about how we're creating that work out in the community as well. And so we try to lead by example, and we try to use an equity lens on our budgeting process. In fact, one question that every department has to answer when they submit their budget to me, their requests to me, is how does this impact equity? What are you doing to do a better job to support people who are disproportionately affected by race, class, gender in our community? So I think that's important work, but I think the next phase of this work really is to be working out in the community more with institutions and organizations to promote equity in everything that's happening in our community, not just what city government controls.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So I have built equity into everything that I've done throughout my career. Working for the Madison Police Department, really infusing inclusivity and equity within our training, within our processes and procedures. And I continued that work, and I'm glad that the mayor is acknowledging all the good work that I did as deputy mayor. I oversaw the racial equity, social justice as deputy mayor, and we did a lot of good work working with our city staff on implementing the toolkit. We actually started under my leadership the hiring equitable tool that the mayor just talked about. We started to use this equity tool in moving through a process as we're developing and making decisions that could potentially impact our most vulnerable communities. And so as mayor, I'm going to elevate that even faster. We have to get it to the city council. There's a lot of decisions that get sent to the city council that I feel that they're not understanding the unintended consequences that they are making on the council floor. And we either have to do that before we send legislation to the council so that they understand the consequences and have the data in front of them before they make the decision. And that's how we get to the community. And so obviously it is hiring people who look like us, who represent us, who speak our own language is important. But at the end of the day, equity should be at the center of every decision that we make in the city. So we continue to drive home the issue of racial disparities in our city that we have today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so before we ask this last question, I want to ask the audience, if you have questions, you should have filled out the card by now. Pass those cards up, and after we ask the last question, there'll be time for audience. All right, so pass them up this way. All right, so the last question that the panel will ask will be directed first to Mayor Satya, and it will be asked by Blacks for Political and Social Action by Yvette Craig.
Hello. So Mayor Scott and Gloria, how would you create a budget that will support housing, human services, and development initiatives while maintaining public safety?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? Yeah, thanks for the question. And the reality of budgets in the city of Madison, but frankly for all communities throughout the state of Wisconsin, is that we are put in a vice by the state legislature. They control how much we can spend. They control how much revenue we can raise. And yet there's no accounting for the fact that just the cost to continue doing what we're doing today goes up every year. And so every budget that I have put together, and all of my budgets have been balanced and all of them have been passed by the city council, has started with a pretty significant structural deficit. That's the reality of leading a city in the state of Wisconsin right now. So in that situation, you have to make some hard choices. You have to think about where are you going to find revenue to do the kinds of things that our community wants. You think about where can you find efficiencies, or sometimes where can you cut. And that's the process that we've gone through every budget, and I hope we have delivered for the community. We spend a significant amount of money on public safety. I have been reluctant, and in fact, under my watch, we have not cut community services, which I think is equally as important as public safety. And we have continued to provide the basic services and infrastructure that keep our city going. It does mean that we have to do things like, and I know you all hate it, but we have to do things like a vehicle registration fee, right? And we have to look to the municipal services bill because we are not allowed to raise the property tax over a certain amount, and prices are what they are. So this is something that we have to balance as a community. And we've tried to listen to what our community wants and provide those services while at the same time providing a balanced budget.
Thank you.
Well, to start with, all of you can help. We need to get a Supreme Court justice that will help us get rid of the gerrymandered maps and restore sanity back to our state government, and then maybe we can get a little bit more freedom in our budget, and at least get the shared revenue that we deserve returned back to the city of Madison. The rest of the budgeting, it's going to be tough. We're heading into really rough times, and I'm going to put it out to the public to make the decisions with me on what we have to cut so that we can maintain the police department, so that we can afford body cameras, so that we can add additional overhead cameras to the city without detriment to the city itself. We're gonna have cuts. I don't see how we avoid it, with the exception of the state changing their ways right now. That's just the reality. The budget's not there. We don't have the money to continue. I'm not gonna make the decisions. I'm gonna make that a public choice as to how we handle it and where we go with the money.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be in a fiscal crisis in the next couple of years. And as mayor, I will advocate and send my legislative liaison to the state capitol and advocate for additional funds. But in reality, I'm going to have to work with what I have and meet with my finance staff on how we got here in the first place. I'm going to look at the BRT, the bus rapid transit system that we've spent significant amount of money on. Well, we will have to keep it going because it's going to cost operating budgets to keep it going. And we're investing in a bus rapid transit system and a rapid redesign that is inequitable. We are providing service to high density areas in the city, but yet we have people of color, people with disability, and our seniors who are having to walk a couple blocks further to get to their bus stop. It's an inequity, and that's something I'm going to look into as soon as I become mayor. I'm going to assess city services. I'm going to meet with all of our nonprofit organizations, all the CEOs that we fund, and we're going to figure out what is working and what's not. Where do we need to invest our funds so that it takes us longer? And we're going to have to make some really tough decisions in the 1 to 2 years. And I think we have made some decisions the past couple of years that have brought us here. And our city is going to be in a tough spot. I can guarantee you as mayor that I'm going to look at everything through an equity lens, because under my watch, the most vulnerable people in our city are not going to suffer. We have 4% increase in taxes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take some audience questions, but I want you to give them a round of applause as we call. But what I also want to do is I see a lot of elected officials in here and a lot of public servants in here. Stand up, raise your hand, and so let's give them a round of applause. Many of you are here. Thank you for your work. Some of you in the hall, thank you. I see you. Thanks for coming. All right, so we have questions from the audience. And the first question is, what is your plan to help the homeless rebuild? And I'm going to put that to you first, Scott.
Well, rebuilding the homeless doesn't sound like a logical move. They're already homeless. I don't know, we need to recreate them. Helping them get into housing is something that we should be doing. And we're already doing a lot of things. We have a couple of private agencies, nonprofits that are doing great work. We can help focus their attention and their monies to expand what's already going on. We have the men's shelter that's currently in use, and we're building the other shelter on Stoughton Road that will help again. But I'm open to other suggestions on how we can expand beyond what we are. We have a lot of money in the community to invest now. I'm not sure we're doing the best with it. So if somebody knows how we can improve that, let me know.
Yep, thank you. We're gonna go 1 minute in responses to these questions, so.
Which way do you want to go?
So, yeah. Mhm.
1 minute, oh my goodness, okay. So I strongly believe that there's an opportunity for us to move homeless individuals into housing. And I think we have given up on our homeless population. I can guarantee you under my watch, we will not have our homeless population living in parks like Rindell Park. It is inhumane, and we just don't do that. We don't treat our human beings, our residents, that way. I strongly believe that we have to have homeless shelters, but I want to build housing first models. I did that as deputy mayor, where we house them first and then provide services, wraparound services to support them. Now, we had significant issues, and we learned a lot from that. But we housed over 43 families in that development. And they were homeless mothers. They were living in cars. They were living in motels. And we currently have homeless mothers living in motels and in cars. They have nowhere to go.
Thank you, Ms.
Sorry.
Reyes. It's all right. Mayor?
Thanks for the question, whoever asked it. During the pandemic, we had to completely transform our approach to homelessness in this city because previous to the pandemic, we had been warehousing homeless men in church basements. And under my leadership, we created multiple temporary shelters, and we're now on track to build the first purpose-built men's shelter in the state of Wisconsin. And we also helped the Salvation Army transform an old nursing home into a family shelter, where they're having really good success getting people into shelter and then moving them out into permanent housing. We also recognize that not everybody is willing to go into a congregate shelter, and so we created the Dairy Drive Urban Campground to help stabilize folks who had previously been sleeping, yes, in parks and on the streets, because they literally weren't willing to go into shelter. And I think that has also helped to stabilize folks and to get into more permanent housing situations. One of the biggest challenges we face is creating housing that we can move these people into, and that's a big focus.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Wave that red card around, girl.
I know. I got distracted. I'm looking at some of these questions. Thank you. So the next question is going to be first directed to Gloria Reyes, and it is, do you think Wisconsin's 1849 criminal abortion ban should be repealed? If so, what will you do as mayor to ensure that Madisonians have access to reproductive services? If not, why do you think the government should have a say in personal decisions between a patient and their physician? It's a long question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's not going to take me a minute. I strongly believe in a woman's right, and I will do what I can as mayor to work with Planned Parenthood and other organizations to help support people and invest in that particularly now. And then I'm also going to send my legislative deputy mayor over and advocate that for this. And so, yeah, that's what I'll do.
I'm not willing to go back to the 1840s for anything. There's not a lot that the mayor can do to change what the state statutes and state laws are. We can advocate, we can push all we want, but I will certainly make sure that we protect the existing infrastructure we have to deliver health services within the city as much as the state allows us to and as much as the federal government allows us to.
Of course it should be repealed. And when the Roe decision, the Dobbs decision was leaked, I wrote a resolution which the city council then passed, putting us on record opposing that and asking the police department to not enforce the Wisconsin law in the city of Madison. Because we don't believe that women should be prosecuted for getting health care. We're working with public health and with providers in the community to help people access the care that they need. And in particular, the county executive and I partnered to increase our reproductive rights clinic and offer long-acting reversible contraceptives free to our community through public health. And the last thing I'll say is I'm very proud to be endorsed by Emily's List, which only endorses pro-choice women.
All right. So the next question will be directed to Scott. There is zoning being addressed regarding apartments not being able to have more than 2 people that are not related. What is your stance on this and why?
You're talking about the definition of family, and family has changed dramatically since our zoning laws were written. I don't have the specific limits of what we need to do, but the buildings that you live in are what establishes the limits of how many people can live in them. There's just so much room in an 800 square foot apartment. You can't put 8 people. If you only have 1 bedroom, you're not allowed to have 10 people living in that unit. My move for this would be to use the building size, the building dimensions to establish how many people can live in it. And whether or not they're married or related shouldn't matter to anybody.
Yeah, I see this as a basic fairness issue. There are different rules right now depending on if you own your home or you rent your home. And I don't think that's fair. So I think, yes, we should be changing the zoning, but I think that at the same time, we have to think about unintended consequences and make sure that we're not displacing folks out of our neighborhoods. And that is going to take some intention and some investment, but I think it's an important thing to do. We have to use every tool in our toolbox to make it easier for people to afford to live in the city of Madison. And the family definition is one of those tools, right? We are pricing out baristas and police officers and teachers. We can't be a community where those people can't afford to live. So we have to do everything possible to make it affordable for folks for the middle class to live in the city of Madison.
You know, this is a complex issue. I mean, I think this is an example of the mayor coming up with a bad idea that needs input from neighborhoods. We have to think about consequences. This is just not about building more housing and housing. We have to keep the housing that we have, look at spaces that we have in our city to redevelop and build housing. This is not, it's gonna not allow families to compete in housing market with several adults and with income renting homes and apartments. It encourages absentee landlords to prevent families from home ownership. The exact same thing that we're talking about earlier about Black home ownership, it's going to reduce that. And it's going to, James Howard, you probably know this. Back in the day, we had an issue with developers buying property.
Thank you.
And students buying it.
Thank
and
you.
It really, sorry,
That's all right.
it impacted our family homes.
Okay.
And we had to close schools.
So the next question will be directed first to Mayor Rhodes-Conway. What do you plan to do to support our Black youth? We need to move away from being the worst city to raise Black children. How do you plan to do that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. But our community has got to shift our attitude. We have to start seeing our youth, and in particular, our youth of color, and in particular, our Black youth as assets instead of liabilities. And so we need to invest in them. And one of the things that we've done with ARPA funding is plus up our summer youth investments over the past couple of years, and particularly push to culturally competent programs that support young people in connecting back to their community and connecting to employment opportunities. So that's just an example of the kind of creative work that we can do, and I think we have to keep doing in partnership with the nonprofit community and in partnership with the school district. I just came tonight from the state of the district. I wish we didn't all have to choose between those two things. It's so important for us to work in collaboration.
Thank you, Mayor.
Supporting all of our youth and making sure all of our youth have a chance is important and difficult. One of the best and most successful things that is going on right now are the trades programs where we're teaching young kids how to be carpenters, electricians, plumbers. sustainable jobs that will help them move out of the situations they're in now, make it so that they can afford to buy homes and be successful. It's also having an effect on how they handle school. Because when they're dealing with the trades programs, they're learning in a new way that helps them again when they get back into school and expands their horizons dramatically. I hope that all of those programs expand, and I would support helping fund them.
Can you repeat that question again for me?
Sure. What do you plan to do to support our black youth? We need to move away from being the worst city to raise black children. How do you plan to do that?
Yes, great question. I've been working with young people my entire career. As a law enforcement officer, recently CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services. We have a lot of black youth coming through Briar Patch, either through the juvenile justice side or our homeless shelter side. And we have to invest in them today for the investment in our city in the future. I'm really concerned right now about our kids who are stealing cars. These are felonies. We are losing young black kids so early in life with the felony. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, we're losing them to the criminal justice system. And that's an injustice. We have to do something to wrap ourselves around young people and provide them the services that they need right now, particularly those who are stealing cars right now, and that's a big issue.
Thank you. All right. So the next question will be directed first towards Gloria. As a public servant for the last 4 years and holding various jobs with the city of Madison as well as the county of Dane, I've noticed that my co-workers are predominantly white, at least 85%. How do you propose making the government workforce more diverse beyond making the job descriptions equitable?
Yeah, so I did exactly this at CEO Briar Patch Youth Services. When I walked in, it was an all-white organization, and all of our kids were black and Latino youth. One of my first things that I tackled was hiring people of color with lived experience to serve the population. And so when somebody left, I changed the position description to take off a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and put credit and counts with people with lived experience. By the time I left Briar Patch, we were a majority of people of color in that organization, and we were a majority people of color and LGBTQ in middle management positions. And it was me and another person that I hired on a leadership team of color. And so leaving Briar Patch, I am so confident that we made right decisions to move Briar Patch forward to ensure that we were able to serve our most vulnerable youth.
Thank you.
It's a tough question. When I first got hired by the city, I was one of 200 candidates. I went up for other positions where I was one of 500 or more candidates. When we post a job now, at times we only get 1 or 2 candidates that actually apply for it. I don't believe I've seen a job posting come through with 20 candidates in years. If we can get more people interested in working for the city, I'm sure we can expand the diversity of our workforce.
One of the first things I did as mayor is start to hold department heads accountable for their hiring. And so we regularly go over the demographics of their departments and talk about what they're doing to do better recruitment and retention, particularly with respect to race and gender. So I think that's important. It's not enough, but it's a good step in the right direction. One of the things that we found, and it is a very difficult hiring environment, I think, across the board right now, not just for the city. So one of the things that we have started to do is to train our own. So we have multiple internship and apprenticeship programs at the City of Madison where we particularly recruit women and people of color to come in to be trained up into jobs in public works, in other agencies, so people can get good family supporting jobs in the long term through an entry level, whether again an apprenticeship or an internship.
Thank you. So we got 2 more questions, so hang in there. So this next question will be directed to you first, Madam Mayor. Since the start of the pandemic, the math and the reading scores of students of color in MMSD have dropped even lower than they were before. Now only 14% of our black and brown fourth graders can read at grade level. What will you do to address this issue? This is from the Simpson Street Press.
Well, first of all, thank you, Simpson Street Press, because you guys address this issue, and we really appreciate your work in the community. It's no question that the pandemic had a really serious impact on our students and on learning loss. One of the ways in which the city partners with the school district is through our Madison Out of School Time program. And we share literally share a staff person who works on this. And we fund out of school time programs that support kids once they leave the school properties. One of the things that I'm really excited about that we did this past summer and that we're going to do again next summer is the Parks Alive program to keep young people engaged throughout the summertime with learning opportunities, but also with fun, and get folks in community so that we're not losing kids over the summer, and we can help them continue to learn both after school and in the summertime. That's something that we need to continue to fund.
Thank you.
The mayor doesn't really set educational priorities for the school board, but we can help by offering things that'll keep students interested and want to learn. So the out-of-school program, give them opportunities to learn new things, something that interests them. I was involved in one of the NRTs where we asked kids to go out and do a placemaking study where they took photographs in their neighborhood and explained what those areas were used for. Up until that point, we had a difficult time getting anybody involved in doing anything. But as soon as we asked them to go out and tell us what they thought about their neighborhood, what they used their spaces for, we had a whole lot more feedback, and it worked fabulously. Programs like that we can then twist into, this is how you learn math. I'll need some help on figuring that one out, but I'm open to it.
Thank you.
So although the mayor does not have educational jurisdiction over the Madison School District, the mayor has a responsibility to lead in the city. What happens in our schools, when they're not thriving, the city is not going to thrive. I mean, we have to be, as a resilient city, we have to have our school district thriving. And Madison Out of School Time is a great program. Used it quite a bit when I was in the mayor's office. I want to, and the libraries. I really want to connect our libraries into our schools into our libraries. Community schools was something that I invested in as a school board member. We already had 2 community schools when James Howard was there, but we added additional community schools, and that's an important program for us to continue. That is our connection to our community and our schools, and we have to. I would talk to Dr. Jenkins and just ask them and say, hey, give me the 10 most vulnerable youth in each school, and respond.
Thank you. And so here's the last question, Scott, and since you got the mic, I'm going to direct it to you. How can the mayor prevent not just people losing their homes, but people losing their communities?
Wow. Well, losing their community is going to be a very difficult thing because it's each of you have your own community, and I don't really have any way to control what your community is. That's your people, your family, your immediate surroundings. But I'll do everything I can to make sure the city of Madison stays intact, responds to what all of you need as much as we can, and we don't make decisions unless most of the citizens agree with it. We won't spend the money unless everybody wants to spend it. And we won't change rules unless everybody wants those rules changed. There's not a lot else I can do to protect your community. So,
thank you, Mayor. This way.
So over the past several years, the city has invested heavily in eviction prevention and in rental assistance, thanks to the generosity of the Biden administration. We have kept a lot of people in their homes, and I think that's really important work for us to have done. But perhaps more importantly, looking forward, we need to make sure that people have housing choices in every neighborhood. We need to make sure that when people want to move into a bigger apartment or a smaller apartment, when people want to move into a house, that they have a choice in their neighborhood. And that means we have to build more housing in just about every neighborhood. And the city is working hard to prevent displacement by building affordable housing and also by land banking so that we can help neighborhoods choose what they want in their neighborhoods.
I mean, housing right now is not affordable. As I mentioned, over half of the rental units are not affordable for Black families in this city. And so people are losing homes. And while we start building affordable or attainable housing, we also need to build economic development. We need to work with our small businesses, our large businesses to ensure that they're paying more than a living wage to afford living in their homes and staying in their homes. We have to watch out for gentrification as well. As we are seeing the Black Renaissance happening, as we are seeing development here in the city, it is the responsibility as mayor to keep the city and the culture the way it is. And we made a lot of mistakes in the past. If you look at Willie Street, if you look at other areas of the city, we are gentrifying people out of their neighborhoods.
All right. Hey, let's give this panel a round of applause. You all did a great job, and we want to thank you for being here tonight and sharing with us. But on behalf of the collaboration that put this together, the NAACP, the 100 Black Men of Madison, the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign, the Urban League, and the Divine Nine, we want to thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for the wonderful questions. And this is our democracy, and so coming out tonight gives me hope that you're going to get out and vote, and you're going to tell other people to get out and vote because you decide, who will be mayor. So thank you for coming, and there'll be more conversations with these candidates, hopefully in the future. Oh. You guys got time? Well, hang on. We're already over time. Oh, okay, all right. I thought you guys had to get out. Yep. Hey, there's voter registration in the lobby.
News 3 Now is always on.
Get the Channel 3000 app, activate the push alerts, and we will send you breaking news, traffic, and weather alerts as it happens.
The Channel 3000 app. Get it now.
Powered by News 3 Now.